out there.
Yeah, and who actually has time to listen to every self-help podcast?
Right.
Not me. So that's where we come in. We did the heavy lifting for you.
We took your source material, which itself was structured kind of like a podcast episode all about self-improvement, and
Yeah, we broke it down.
distilled it.
Exactly. We got rid of the fluff, so you
Yeah.
get just the good stuff, the cheat codes, basically.
Think of it like a shot of espresso for your personal growth journey.
I like that. And speaking of growth, this source jumps right into a classic goal setting.
Of course. Can't talk about self-improvement without goals, right?
For sure. But not just any kind of goal setting. This source is all about SMART goals.
Yeah, SMART goals. They're not just about wishing for things, but about creating a roadmap to actually achieve them.
So it's like instead of saying, I want to write a book, which honestly feels kind of overwhelming.
Right. Who has time for that?
Exactly. A SMART goal would be more like, I'm going to write for 30 minutes every morning.
There you go. Now it feels doable.
Totally. It breaks that huge, daunting goal into these bite-sized, manageable chunks.
And the source emphasizes how important that is. By breaking it down, you get to celebrate those small wins along the way, which keeps you motivated.
It's like leveling up in a game. Each small victory gives you that little dopamine hit.
Okay, but before we get too caught up in checking things off our to-do lists, this source makes another really interesting point.
Yeah.
It's not just about what you're trying to achieve, it's about the mindset you bring to the table.
Ah, the power of mindset. It's huge. This source dives into Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset.
Yeah, growth mindset. It's like you're upgrading your brain's software to see challenges as opportunities instead of roadblocks.
Exactly. With a fixed mindset, you hit a bump in the road and you think, well, that's it. I'm done.
Game over.
Right. But with a growth mindset, those obstacles become chances to learn and grow.
It's like, think about learning a new language. Oh, good example.
At first, you're making all these mistakes. It's frustrating, right?
Absolutely.
But a growth mindset helps you see those mistakes not as failures, but as stepping stones.
Totally. They're part of the process.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important point that this source makes. Even with the best mindset in the world, we all hit roadblocks. Nobody's perfect.
Life happens.
It does. So what do we do when those inevitable setbacks pop up?
Well, this source suggests taking a step back, reassessing. Sometimes you need to hit pause before you can move forward.
Yeah, like that saying, when you're in a hole, stop digging. Sometimes you need a fresh perspective.
Right. And this source even suggests journaling as a way to process those thoughts and feelings. Sort of like having a therapy session with yourself.
Minus the awkward silences, hopefully.
Exactly.
Now, this podcast wouldn't be complete without a couple of solid book recommendations.
Oh, for sure. Everyone loves a good book recommendation, and this one doesn't disappoint.
Not at all. It points to two classics in the self-development world. Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Classic for a reason.
And The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. You read that one?
Oh, yeah. It's practically required reading in this field. Atomic Habits is all about how small changes can lead to big results. It's about building those tiny habits consistently over time.
Right. Like instead of trying to overhaul your entire life in one go, you focus on drinking an extra glass of water every day or something.
Precisely. Small changes, big impact.
Yeah, the 7 Habits, it's like a crash course in effectiveness, both personally and professionally. It's about understanding yourself, prioritizing your time, and building strong relationships.
It's about showing up as your best self.
Exactly. And what I love is that these concepts, they're timeless. They're relevant whether you're just dipping your toes into self-improvement or you're a total self-help junkie.
Right. And that's where things get really interesting. You see, it's not enough to just read about this stuff.
Oh, I know you got to put it into practice. So what actionable steps does this podcast offer? What can we actually do with all this information?
You got it. It's about taking action. And this podcast, it's all about making that connection. It's not just about knowing, it's about doing.
Okay, love that. So what'd they say? How do we actually use this stuff?
Well, they break it down into 3 things. 3 key takeaways. First, don't try to do everything at once.
Right.
It's tempting, but...
I know. Overwhelmed city. Been there.
Exactly. So start small. Pick one thing, just one area you want to focus on and set, like 1 or 2 goals. Achievable ones, of course.
It's like that saying, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
I was just thinking that. So true. Okay, so start small and then
Don't leave me hanging.
the second tip is to develop a routine.
Okay, routine. Sounds good in theory.
Right. But it's easier said than done.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
How do you make those good intentions stick? Any tips from the pros?
Well, they talked about this thing called habit stacking. Have you heard of that?
Habit stacking? Maybe. I don't know. What is it?
It's so smart. So you take a new habit and something you're trying to do, and you stack it onto an old habit, one you already do without thinking.
Give me an example. I'm not following.
Okay, say you want to start a gratitude practice,
Z-
right? You could write down 3 things you're grateful for right after you brush your teeth.
Oh, because I already brush my teeth every day.
Every day. So you're piggybacking on a habit that's already strong.
Makes sense. Okay, that's going in my back pocket.
The
So start small,
Yeah.
build a routine. What was the third thing?
third one, all about your people. Surround yourself with support.
Yes, community.
Oh.
It's so important.
They emphasize that. Having people who get it, who cheer you on, who you can talk to when it's hard, makes a huge difference.
It's like having your own personal cheerleading squad. Love it.
Right. And it made me think, too, this source, they did a good job of saying what to do,
Yeah.
the steps. But they also touched on something bigger.
Uh, I love it when you say that. What's got you thinking? This is my favorite part. The big reveal. So tell me, what really struck you about this podcast and self-improvement?
It got me thinking about the why of it all.
The why. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
Like, we talk about setting goals and building habits, but why? Why do we even bother with self-improvement in the first place?
It's a good question. I mean, we can all just coast, right? So why do we do it?
Right. For some people, it might be about achieving something specific, like getting a promotion or finally writing that novel they've always dreamed of.
Yeah, external goals. Those are definitely motivating, but I
Yeah.
think you're hinting at something deeper.
Yeah, because this podcast, it subtly touches on this idea that self-improvement, it's not just about checking things off a to-do list. It's about something more meaningful.
And more meaningful. Okay.
It's about understanding yourself better,
Yeah.
finding your purpose, maybe even finding a sense of peace within yourself.
I like that. So it's not about becoming some perfect version of ourselves that we've seen in a magazine or online. It's about creating a life that feels true to who we really are.
Exactly. And sometimes to get there, we have to ask ourselves some tough questions, like, what's really important to me? What kind of impact do I want to have on the world? What makes me feel truly alive?
Wow, those are big questions.
They are, but they're important ones.
I agree. This deep dive has been quite the journey. We started with SMART goals, and now we're talking about the meaning of life.
That's self-improvement for you. But hey, before we get too philosophical, let's bring it back to our listeners. What's the one thing we want them to take away from all of this?
Good point. I think the biggest takeaway is that self-improvement, it's not a destination. It's a journey.
And it's okay to take it one small step at a time.
Exactly. So as you go about your day, ask yourself, what's one tiny habit I can start building today to become a little bit closer to the best version of myself? You got this.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and we'll catch you on the flip side.